Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So I guess this video is a quick preview and prediction for Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos Jr. This fight goes down on the 19th of June, and this fight is happening because George Kambosos Jr. is the IBF mandatory at lightweight. Ultimately, this is a massive step up for him, and we will see how he handles the occasion. He's talking well, he's sounding confident, but whether that transpires in the ring or not, we will see on the 19th of June. But let's briefly run through the tail of the tape, and we will start with Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez has a perfect record of 16 wins, no defeats, 12 of those 16 wins coming by way of knockout, and George Kambosos Jr. also has a perfect record of 19-0, 10 of his 19 wins coming by way of knockout. Teofimo Lopez is listed as 5'8", with a 68.5 inch reach, whereas George Kambosos Jr. is listed as 5'9.5", with a 68 inch reach. So Kambosos is 1.5 inches taller, but Teofimo Lopez does have half an inch in reach advantage. Both of these guys are orthodox fighters. Teofimo Lopez is 23 years old, whereas George Kambosos is 28 years old. So both guys are young and fresh. Now the tail of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down what I believe each guy should do. And after that, of course, I will, give you my prediction. But I guess we'll start with the huge underdog, George Kambosos Jr. And I have to say, going into this fight, he's a huge underdog, and rightly so. I don't really give him much of a shot, but in order to have a shot, I think the first thing about George Kambosos is, obviously the guy's a pressure fighter. Naturally, he is very aggressive, but, in the fights I've seen from him previously, while he does cut the ring off relatively well, and he's got quite quick feet coming forwards, the thing is with George Kambosos Jr. is he's very open in terms of defense. He leaves a lot of openings for his opponents, and when you're fighting someone like Teofimo Lopez, who's extremely quick off the counter with one shot and hurtful shots, that could be a recipe for disaster. When you look at the Lee Selby fight and the Mickey Bay fight, those guys were able to counter George Kambosos relatively easily. Only problem was, those guys really didn't have the power to keep Kambosos honest. Teofimo does, and then some. So in this fight, I want to see George Kambosos Jr. utilise much more of a high guard while applying pressure. In his previous fights, sometimes you'll see him apply pressure with his hands down or just his lead hand up, trying to draw the lead as he's coming forwards. But I think in this fight, like I said, he needs to come forwards behind a nice tight guard and be nice and compact. And also, obviously, on top of that, come forwards behind a jab, use that jab to try and force Teofimo Lopez back and apply pressure. That's another thing I've noticed about George Kambosos. At times when he's applying pressure, sometimes he neglects his jab, and instead he will lead with power shots, whether it be hooks or uppercuts through the middle or his overhand right. And yeah, in this fight, I think you'll need to see a much more effective and consistent jab from George Kambosos Jr. So nice and tight defensively, coming in behind a consistent ramrod jab, trying to cut the distance, trying to force Teofimo Lopez back, and obviously when he has him where he wants him on the ropes in the corner, that's when George Kambosos should try and unload with combinations, go from body to head, etc. Kambosos does actually have quite nice hand speed when he throws his shots, but again, I think the distance of where he's throwing those shots is going to be very important. He can't really afford to do it from the outside, trying to throw combinations on the outside, or even at mid-range. I think in those opportunities, Teo's going to be far too dangerous on the counter and could time Kambosos in between his combinations. I think George Kambosos would be much better suited throwing his combinations when he's on the inside. I don't think Teofimo is as great on the inside as he is at mid-range, and even on the outside to a lesser degree. So to me, Kambosos, again, come in behind the jab, high guard, and basically try and smother the power of Teofimo Lopez and basically work up real close to him on the inside, in the clinch, that sort of thing. I can't see Kambosos exchanging with Teo and it ending well. And if he's going to throw combinations on the outside, that's the risk he takes. He could easily get hurt or get knocked out due to his defense. Defensively, Kambosos leaves a lot to be desired, and when he does throw combinations at mid-range on the outside, he leaves a lot of openings for a quick counter-puncher like Teofimo Lopez. And yeah, ultimately, George Kambosos needs to fight the fight of his life. He needs to be switched on 100% of the time, defensively responsible, but at the same time, relentless, have a high work rate, and try and drag Teofimo somewhere real horrible in which he's not expecting. Because going into this fight, the impression I get is that Teofimo expects this to be a walkover. And if a fighter does go into a fight with that mindset, and then his opponent actually, gives him a harder fight than imagined, it can actually really mess with the fighter's head, who was thinking it was going to be a walkover kind of thing. Because if you're not motivated going into the ring, it's very hard to get motivated in the middle of a ring when the fight is transpiring, and it's a little harder than you expect. So yeah, George has to apply pressure in a lot more smart fashion than he previously has. Can he do that? I'm not particularly convinced, in all honesty, but I think that's what he needs to do. As for the overwhelming favourite, Teofimo Lopez, ultimately he needs to be him. Teo is he's an exceptionally good counter-puncher, in my opinion. Very quick off the counter, and when he connects, he can really make you pay. If you make one wrong move, overcommit, throw while you're out of range, throw while you're off balance, Teofimo can spot that and make you pay and badly hurt you, as we saw in the Richard Comey fight. So naturally, Teofimo needs to adopt that usual style, wait for the mistakes, because they will come from George Kambosos Jr. He does make plenty of mistakes defensively. And yeah, Teo needs to be aware of those mistakes, but also I want to see Teofimo actually go through the gears a little in this fight and maybe actually apply a little more pressure than we're used to seeing. I don't really believe Kambosos has all that much for Teofimo to worry about. He's a little bit bigger, but George Kambosos isn't really a big puncher, in all honesty. He's not as fast as Teofimo, not as creative as Teofimo offensively, not even as defensively sound as Teofimo. I want to see Teofimo Lopez in this fight actually force the issue a little more and be a bit more aggressive than he usually is. Be like an aggressive boxer-puncher in this fight, instead of just waiting for the counter and waiting for his opponents to make mistakes for him. I want to see Teofimo really do a job on George Kambosos Jr. I want to see him go through those combinations, work the body, work the head, and really try and make a statement in this bout. He's been out of the ring for quite some time since the Lomachenko fight. When was that fight? Back in October, November last year. This fight goes down 19th of June, so he's been out of the ring for a few months. And when that happens after a really good win, sometimes your momentum, which you got after that win, starts to phase out as you are out of a ring month after month. So in this fight, I want to see Teofimo try and regain that hype, regain that momentum, and do a real job on George Kambosos Jr. I think he can afford to take more risks in this fight. I don't personally see George Kambosos as all that dangerous. He couldn't really put a dent in Lee Selby for the most part, who's a blown-up featherweight essentially. I don't really see George Kambosos as a massive puncher. I don't think he does anything all that special, in all honesty. So I think in this fight, Teofimo Lopez can take a few more liberties than he usually does. And I want to see him put on a show, in all honesty. And after this, hopefully we see a big fight with Devin Haney, a Lomachenko rematch, or maybe Ryan Garcia. But ultimately, we can't look past Teofimo Lopez winning this fight. I think he'll win this fight, and I think he'll win this fight quite comfortably. My prediction for this fight is a mid-round stoppage for Teofimo Lopez. I would say rounds 5, 6 or 7, Teofimo Lopez by stoppage. And I think he's going to put on a real good performance in this fight. I think Kambosos will be tough. He will keep on trying. I think he's that sort of character, but ultimately, in terms of styles, in terms of skill, I don't really believe he's got what it takes to beat Teofimo Lopez. So I've got a Teofimo Lopez mid-round stoppage. How about you guys? How do you see this fight going? It's been your guy Del Boy. Peace.